The night I signed my name on that contract, I thought I was saving my sister's life. I didn't think I was handing mine over to a stranger. It was late October in Chicago. One of those nights where the wind off the lake cuts right through you, no matter how many layers you're wearing. I'd been working at Hargrove & Associates for 6 years, long enough to know every trick in the fine print, short enough that I still believed the right people generally did the right things. My name is Cassidy. I was 31 years old. I had a studio apartment in Wicker Park, a cat named Tuesday, and a sister in the ICU at Northwestern Memorial with a bill that had already cleared $340,000 and was climbing by the hour. I was not okay. My manager, Barrett, had pulled me into his office that afternoon and slid a folder across his desk with the kind of careful, deliberate motion that told me he'd been rehearsing it. "There's a private investor," he said. "He wants someone on the ground for a contract negotiation. One night. The fee is significant." I looked at the number he'd written on the notepad. I looked at it for a long time. "What kind of contract negotiation happens at 11 p.m. on a Thursday?" I asked. Barrett said he didn't know. He said the investor was a private client, long-standing, important. He said the legal work itself was clean, just signing off on an acquisition document as a notarized witness. He said I should think of it as overtime. I didn't ask enough questions. That's the thing I keep coming back to. I was a contracts attorney, and I didn't ask enough questions, because the number on that notepad was almost exactly what my sister Maddie owed the hospital, and my brain had already decided before my mouth caught up. I said yes. The address took me to a building on East Wacker. I'd walked past 1,000 times without ever looking up. 40-something floors of dark glass, the kind that reflects the city back at itself, like it has no interest in you seeing inside. A man in the lobby checked my name against a list and handed me a visitor badge without making eye contact. The elevator opened directly into a private floor. Not an office, a residence. I should have turned around right there. A woman in a black blazer met me at the elevator doors and introduced herself as Ms. Harlow. She had the careful, practiced neutrality of someone who had worked for powerful people long enough to forget they were allowed to have opinions. "Mr. Ashford is expecting you," she said. Ashford. I filed that away. She led me through a living room that looked like someone had given a very expensive designer, a brief that said intimidating but tasteful. Dark wood, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river, a bar cart that probably cost more than my car. There was a document folder on the glass dining table. My eyes went to it automatically. "Mrs. Moore," the voice came from across the room. I turned. He was standing near the windows with his back to me, looking out at the city. When he turned around, I had the disorienting feeling of recognizing someone you've never met. Not his face, but the way he moved. Like someone who was accustomed to every room rearranging itself around him, without being asked. He was mid-40s, dark hair going silver at the temples. He was wearing a dress shirt with the sleeves rolled to the elbows, like he'd been in the middle of something, and hadn't bothered to put himself fully back together. "I'm Cassidy Moore," I said, because it felt important to establish that I had a name. I was told this was a witness notarization for an acquisition. "It is." He walked to the table and opened the folder. "Sit down." I didn't sit. "I'd like to review the document first." Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, more like a recalculation. "Of course," he said. I read the whole thing. It took me 20 minutes and he didn't rush me, which I noted. The document itself was exactly what Barrett had described. A real estate acquisition, a commercial property on the south side, straightforward. My role was to notarize his signature as a witness. Nothing in the document had my name on it in any operative capacity. I was there to watch him sign. I notarized it. He poured 2 glasses of something amber and set one in front of me. I didn't touch it. "You read the entire document," he said. "I'm an attorney. Most of the people Barrett sends me don't bother." I looked up at that. "How many people has he sent you?" "This is the 3rd time I've needed a notary after hours." He sat back in his chair in a way that managed to look both relaxed and entirely deliberate. "The first 2 didn't read past the first page. That's bad practice." "Yes," he said, "it is." I picked up my bag. I was already thinking about the hospital, about Maddie, about how I was going to transfer the fee the moment it cleared. "My sister is sick," I said. I don't know why I said it. I hadn't planned to. That's why I'm here at 11 on a Thursday. In case you were wondering. He looked at me for a moment. What's wrong with her? Acute liver failure. She's been on the transplant list for 6 weeks. He didn't say I'm sorry the way people do when they're filling space. He just nodded, once, like he was cataloging the information. I hope she gets the call soon, he said. It was such a simple thing to say. I almost thanked him. Instead, I said goodnight, and Miss Harlow walked me back to the elevator, and I went home and lay awake most of the night thinking about nothing in particular. 3 weeks later, Maddie got her transplant. 3 weeks after that, I got a letter. It was hand-delivered to my office. Actual paper, actual envelope, the kind of formal correspondence I hadn't seen since passing the bar. The return address was a law firm I didn't recognize. Inside was a single page. The document was a marriage certificate. My name was on it. So was the name Ashford, Rowan James. The date on the certificate was the night I had gone to his apartment to notarize a real estate document. I read it 4 times before my brain would process what my eyes were telling me. Then I called Barrett and said, in a voice that was much calmer than I felt, what exactly did I sign 3 weeks ago? There was a silence on the line that told me everything. Cassidy, the acquisition document, I said. The real estate acquisition I witnessed. What was the property? I was told it was a private matter. I hung up. I went back to my desk and I pulled up every real estate acquisition filed in Cook County in the past 30 days. I cross-referenced the address from the document I'd notarized. The acquisition I'd witnessed was a legal transfer of rights under an existing contract, a domestic partnership agreement that had been grandfathered under an old trust instrument, and carried the legal weight, under Illinois statute, of a civil marriage when executed with a notarized witness present. The property wasn't a building on the south side. The property, technically, legally, was me. I went back to the building on East Wacker. I didn't call ahead. I stood in the lobby and told the man at the desk that I was there to see Sister Ashford and that if he didn't call up right now, I was going to start making calls of my own. Starting with the State Bar, then the Attorney General's office, then every business reporter in the city of Chicago who covered real estate. I was in the elevator within 4 minutes. Ms. Harlow met me at the top with an expression that told me she wasn't entirely surprised. He was in the living room. Same city view, different shirt, same unhurried quality to everything he did. He looked up when I walked in and didn't stand, which I chose to interpret as disrespect, even though some part of me registered it as something else. The absence of performance, like I'd caught him in the middle of something real. I dropped the marriage certificate on the table between us. Would you like to explain this, I said, or would you like me to start explaining it to you? He looked at the document. Then he looked at me. I'd offer you a drink, he said, but I suspect you'd throw it at me. The document I notarized, I said. You had it modified before I arrived. The real estate language was a wrapper around a domestic partnership clause. I witnessed your signature on a marriage contract without knowing that's what it was. That is fraud. That is criminal fraud. I am an attorney, and I am telling you that you have committed. I know what I did. The room went quiet. He said it so flatly, not defensive, not apologetic, just a statement of fact, offered to me like he was handing over a file. Then explain it, I said. He was quiet for a moment. He stood and walked to the windows, which I was beginning to understand was his version of collecting himself. When he turned back, something in his face was different, less composed. There's a trust, he said. My grandfather established it in 1987. The terms require that I be legally married before I turn 46 in order to maintain controlling interest in the Ashford Group. My 46th birthday is in 11 weeks. That's not a reason to. My business partner of 12 years has been systematically moving assets into subsidiary accounts for the past 8 months. If I lose controlling interest, he finalizes the transfer, and I lose everything I've spent 2 decades building. He paused. Not just the company, the foundation, the affordable housing developments on the south side, 11 active projects, about 4,000 families. I stared at him. You could have just asked me, I said. You could have called my office and said, I have an unusual request. I will pay you a significant amount of money. Here is the situation. I would have said no, probably, but you could have asked. Would you have said no? He said. Yes. Even if the fee had been, yes. Because I read contracts for a living, and I understand the difference between a business arrangement and a marriage. and you needed me not to understand that difference for your plan to work. I picked up the certificate. So, what now? That's what I'd like to discuss. You don't get to decide what we discuss. I'm the one holding a fraudulent marriage certificate with my name on it. I pulled out my phone. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to say something that changes the calculation here, and then I'm calling Maddie. I stopped. Your sister, he said. She got her transplant. She's recovering well, I understand. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What does my sister have to do with this conversation? Nothing, he said immediately. Nothing, I'm not threatening you. I need you to know that. I'm not that kind of person. He ran a hand through his hair, which was the first genuinely unpolished thing I'd seen him do. I brought her up because I've been thinking about you for 3 weeks. About the fact that you came to my apartment at 11 at night to work an extra job so you could pay your sister's hospital bills, and you read every word of a document you had every reason to just skim. And He stopped. I want you to understand that I know exactly what I took from you without asking, and I intend to make it right. How? I said. Do you intend to make that right? By giving you a choice, he said. A real one. Not a trick, not a doctored document. A real offer with full information that you can refuse without consequence. I sat down, slowly, like sitting down was a concession I wasn't fully prepared to make. Talk, I said. He talked for 2 hours. The Ashford Group was real. I'd heard of it vaguely. Mostly in connection with the kind of city development projects that get a 3-paragraph story in the Tribune when they break ground and then disappear from the news cycle. He walked me through the trust, the timeline, the business partner, a man named Galvin, who had been skimming from subsidiary accounts and had, it turned out, filed a petition to challenge Rowan's controlling interest on the basis that the marriage clause had expired. The certificate I was holding was his preemptive move. Legally valid, he believed, but not yet registered. He'd been waiting to see if I would simply disappear and never look at the document too closely. You underestimated me, I said. I did, he said. Thoroughly. What are you actually asking me for? He slid a folder across the table. A real one, clearly labeled, every page indexed. A formal arrangement, he said. 6 months. Long enough to satisfy the trust requirement and give me time to build a legal case against Galvin. You would continue your work at Hargrove. I have no interest in disrupting your life. We would appear at 2 or 3 public functions. You would be compensated at a rate I think you'll find addresses your sister's remaining medical costs, and then some. And in 6 months, an uncontested dissolution. I have attorneys who specialize in exactly this kind of trust law. You walk away clean, legally and financially. I looked at him for a long time. He held my gaze without flinching, which I noted. I have conditions, I said. I expected you would. First, I want a separate agreement, drafted by an attorney of my choosing that outlines every term of this arrangement. No surprises, no fine print, no late additions. Agreed. Second, my name doesn't appear in any Ashford Group materials. My face doesn't appear in any press. Minimal public exposure, and I approve everything in advance. Agreed. Third, I paused. If I find out at any point that you've withheld material information, anything that affects my legal standing, my career, my family, this arrangement terminates immediately, and I reserve the right to pursue every legal remedy available to me. Something moved across his face, not quite a smile. Something more careful than that. You negotiate the way you read documents, he said. Thoroughly. Yes, I said. I do. He extended his hand across the table. I looked at it. I thought about Maddie, still in a hospital bed with a new liver, and a mountain of bills, and a sister who had run out of options 3 weeks ago and made a choice in the dark. I thought about 4,000 families in 11 housing projects on the South Side. I thought about the fact that this man had lied to me, manipulated me, and then sat across a table from me and told me the truth about all of it without flinching. I thought, this is either the worst decision I've ever made or the most interesting one. I shook his hand. My name is Cassidy, I said. I know, he said. Rowan. The next 6 weeks were the strangest of my life. We were careful. We were deliberate. We appeared at a charity gala in the Gold Coast where someone photographed us talking near the bar, and Rowan put his hand lightly on my elbow when someone from his board came to say hello, and I smiled at the right moments and asked questions that sounded like interest because they were. I was constitutionally incapable of being in a room full of people and not wanting to understand what everyone was actually doing there. At the office the next morning, my colleague Preeti slapped a printout on my desk. Someone had posted the photo. Rowan Ashford and Mystery Woman at the Lakefront Foundation Gala. "That's you," Preeti said. "Why are you at a gala with Rowan Ashford? Why do you look like that in this photo? What is happening, Cassidy? I need information." "It's complicated," I said. "You have a cat named Tuesday and you eat the same salad every single day for lunch," she said. "Complicated is not your setting." She wasn't wrong. Rowan called me by my last name in public. Ms. Moore. Formal, correct, the appropriate distance for a situation that was not what it appeared to be. In private, at the 2 dinners we had to review the Galvin case documents, sitting across from each other at his dining room table, with legal briefs and takeout containers. He called me Cass. I didn't ask him not to. He had a dry humor that appeared without announcement and disappeared just as quickly. He made excellent coffee, which he would leave on the kitchen counter when he knew I was coming to go over documents. The way some people leave notes. He was direct to the point of bluntness about almost everything, except the things that actually mattered to him, at which point he became careful in a way that I recognized, because it was the way I talked about Maddie when I wasn't sure how much to say. I noticed these things. I cataloged them. I told myself it was professional attentiveness. It wasn't. The Galvin situation came to a head on a Tuesday. Of course it did. I was at the office when Rowan's assistant called my cell. Not Miss Harlow this time. Someone younger, voice tight. Galvin had gone public. A statement to the Tribune claiming that Rowan's marriage was fraudulent. That he had documentation proving no valid marriage had taken place before the deadline, and that he intended to challenge the trust before the end of the week. I sat at my desk for a moment. Then I called Rowan. He picked up on the first ring. "I saw it," he said. "He has documentation," I said. "Which means someone in your circle leaked the original certificate before you registered it. We need to, Cassidy." His voice was different, quieter. "I know. I need you to know that whatever happens with the trust, whatever happens with Galvin, you have fulfilled every part of our agreement. You can walk away right now if you want to. Legally, I will make sure you're protected. I don't want you to feel like you're caught in something that isn't yours." I looked at my desk. Tuesday's photo was tucked into the corner of my monitor. I'd brought her in for a day when the apartment was being painted and someone had taken a picture of her sleeping on my keyboard. I thought about Maddie, who had finally been discharged last week and called me from the parking lot of the hospital crying because she could breathe without it hurting. I thought about Rowan, who made excellent coffee and left it for me without making a thing about it. "I'm not walking away," I said. A pause. "You don't have to do that," he said. "I know," I said. "That's why I'm doing it." What followed was not romantic. It was 11 days of depositions, document production, and me putting in more hours than I'd worked in a calendar year. Rowan's legal team was good. I made them better. I found 3 instances of Galvin's asset transfers that their forensic accountant had flagged but not fully traced. I stayed up until 4 in the morning 2 nights in a row, running the paper trail through a property transfer database that Hargrove used for real estate cases. Rowan came into the conference room at 2 in the morning on day 9 and set a coffee down next to me without saying anything. I looked up. "You should go home," I said. "You have the deposition in 6 hours. So do you. I'm used to this." I clerked for a federal judge. I once did 48 hours on a bankruptcy case. He sat down across from me. "What did you find?" I turned the laptop. Galvin was running a shell company through a property management LLC. He was collecting management fees from Ashford Properties and routing them here. I tapped the screen. Which means he wasn't just skimming. He was actively defrauding your tenants. He was overcharging for maintenance that never happened and pocketing the difference. Rowan looked at the screen for a long moment. "Those are real people," he said quietly. "Yes," I said, "they are." He looked at me. In the way that I had learned, over the past 6 weeks, to be careful about, the way that made it difficult to maintain the very clear and sensible professional distance I had established for very clear and sensible professional reasons. "Why are you doing this?" He's not the arrangement. I understand the arrangement, but this. He gestured at the papers, at the 2 a.m., at all of it. "Because it's the right thing to do," I said. "Cass, Because they're real people, I said. And because, I stopped. I looked at the laptop instead of at him. Because you left the coffee on the counter and didn't say anything about it. And that's the kind of person you are, and I prefer those people to win. The room was very quiet for a moment. That's a lot of conclusions to draw from a coffee, he said. I'm a contracts attorney, I said. I draw conclusions from very small data points. He smiled then, not the careful calibrated expression he used in public, but the real one, the one that appeared without warning and changed his whole face. Your cat is named Tuesday, he said. Yes, why Tuesday? I found her on a Tuesday. I was having a terrible week, and I found her in the parking lot of my office in a box, with one other kitten, and the other kitten got adopted and she didn't, because she has a slightly crossed eye, and I thought she deserved to be chosen. He looked at me. That's the most you, he said. Galvin's petition was dismissed 16 days later. The evidence of tenant fraud moved the case from a civil trust dispute to something significantly more serious, and Galvin's legal team exited the picture with an efficiency that suggested they had been prepared for this possibility. Galvin himself released a brief statement through a PR firm that translated to "I would like this to stop." The Ashford Trust was certified, controlling interest confirmed. Rowan called me from the courthouse. It's done, he said. I saw the filing, I said. Congratulations, Cass, a pause. Our agreement, I know, I said. 6 months. We're at 7. Another pause. I'd like to take you to dinner, he said. Not for a public event, not for any strategic purpose. I'd like to take you to dinner because I want to. I sat in my office chair and looked at Tuesday's photo in the corner of my monitor. That's outside the terms of our arrangement, I said. Yes, he said. It is. You understand I'll read whatever we're getting into very carefully. I expected nothing less, he said. And I have conditions. He laughed, actually laughed, quiet and real, the way he did when something caught him off guard. Of course you do. Tuesday comes to dinner. She travels well. I'll make sure the restaurant is cat-friendly. It has to be somewhere that serves good coffee. I know a place. I looked at the window. Chicago in May, the lake glinting in the distance. Maddie texting me that morning to say she'd made it to her 6-week post-transplant checkup, and everything looked good. Rowan, I said. Yeah, for the record, I said I would have said yes. He was quiet for a moment. To dinner, he said. To any of it, I said. If you'd asked, I would have said yes. Another pause, longer this time, the kind that had weight in it. I'll remember that, he said. You should, I said. I only say things once. I hung up and opened my desk drawer and looked at the marriage certificate I'd been keeping there for 7 months, folded in the same envelope it had arrived in. I thought about everything it had cost me, and everything it had accidentally, unexpectedly, stubbornly given me back. Then I called Maddie. I'm going to dinner, I told her. She screamed so loud Tuesday jumped off the couch.